horse drifted alarmingly in the betting, was, fancied in the morning, continued to drift. It was late on the exchanges to lose. It was something you'd see in a Dick Francis novel, Charles Buttons.
The ground is soft. It's
heavy.
It's soft on times.
It's heavy.
Okay.
Hello, and a big warm welcome to the Barter's Inquiry Sunday Sermon. Yes, this is the show where we get down and dirty with all the happenings of this week and all the problems within the industry. And of course, the small matter of the St. Ledger weekend, to go through some races and chew the fat on some of those. So joining me and my two usual cohorts in Mr. Jonas Lang, who is always in good form, aren't you, John?
Yeah, I'm just a little bit sad that the King didn't win the Ledger yesterday, really. It would have been the first time we'd seen him crack a smile since Diana died.
Yeah.
And what do you make of that, Chris?
I think it's disgusting. As a committed royalist, I think you should be sent to the Tower for that. That's appalling.
It's funny because in the Middle Ages he actually would for that, wouldn't he? It'd be turned off straight up to the Mary Queen of Scots room.
Fucking head chopped off.
Yeah. I think he'd have done it though before.
You get the sword off. That's Reggie's department, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Not good. Not good.
That's how you start the show. That's it. A Republican podcast, as John often likes to say. Well, I am now Purple Fingers has took charge. But anyway, on to Doncaster. It's an interesting thing, Doncaster, this week, because obviously it's the first time since it's gone from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday to the Sunday. Did it make a difference, John?
Yeah, this was awful.
Say what you mean,
It was shit today, wasn't it? It's a damn squib. I mean, if you're going to go on to the Sunday, have the fucking Ledger on the Sunday.
What we're saying then, the Doncaster should be done in 3 days.
Well, it should, but if you have to go into the Sunday, you've got to have the Ledger on the last day. You've got to have the big tumultuous climax, haven't you, on the final day of the meeting.
Well, it's like when, I know obviously on a lesser scale, it's like when they did Ascot Heath, wasn't it, on the Saturday? They did the 4 royal meeting, then it was Ascot Heath on the Saturday. Yeah. And the only people left were the ones that were just able to stand up. Barely able to stand up after the first 4 days. So it didn't really attract anyone other than the people still ligging down there.
You have got about a dozen people still in morning suits as well. That was funny.
It's like a With Nail and I episode, weren't it, Ascot?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so Doncaster, not a roaring success, says John. On to the results then of this weekend, and we'll start with the flagship and work around it. So the St. Ledger, John, continuous, did the biz as we predicted on the show that it would do. Were you impressed by it? Is there anything to take out of the race going forwards? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think it probably showed that it was the class angle in the race. Out of all of them before the race, if you said was there a likely arc contender in there, it had to have been that one, wouldn't it, on the Voltiger form. He's done more or less what we expected him to do. I thought Desert Hero surprised me, actually, how well he ran. He showed he could probably make up into a cup horse for next year, I thought. Hopefully not a Gold Cup horse, because we'll never hear the fucking end of that, will we, if he wins that? Other than that, I don't know. The Gosden Melrose winner probably hated the ground. He went with another chance next year. I mean, 2 of the 3 Gosden horses probably want putting away for the year now anyway.
Peter Robinson described it as one of the rides of the year, John. Are you in that camp or just...
Certainly better than Ollie Does on Troshan. That was getting plenty of plaudits, wasn't it? So, no, it was a good ride. Good ride.
Yeah, do you think that kick in the belly at that point sort of like sent everything like floundering like wild Atlantic salmon, sort of 2 out?
Well, the gap presented itself and he had to go, didn't he? Because if you sit still on a fence and it shuts on you and you sat there after the 3 furlong pool, somebody's going to shove it up your ass, aren't they, really? So he didn't really have a choice. He had to go when he did. he's just very effective in big races, and he doesn't make mistakes. He's not Pat Dobbs, he's not Sam Hitchcock, he's not.
Yeah,
really
I think he's head and shoulders above him at the minute, isn't he? It's not so much the brilliance; it's the limitation of mistakes, as you say. He makes far fewer mistakes than everybody else, and obviously helps he's on the best horses. But yeah, I think you're right.
I think that's it, Chris. I think it is down to mistakes, and Ryan Moore is not exempt from that because he does make a few of them. But I think it is like the least amount of mistakes that wins the day because trainers, owners know when a jockey's fucked up, and they'll sometimes not say it in public, and but everyone knows when they've made a mess. Just going back to Friday, then, John.
Yeah,
which I thought was quite an interesting day, really. More interesting than Saturday in some ways, because we got Dancing Gemini absolutely bolting up in the Flying Scotsman. I'd like to get your view on that because I've not spoke to you about that race in detail. What's your thoughts?
Well, Dancing Gemini absolutely tanked at Ascot when the Champagne Stakes favourite beat him. So, I mean, you had to write that farm off anyway. War Rooms had gone backwards, I think, from debut. I mean, he was greener in this race than he was on debut. Don't think everything ran to the full potential in that Flying Scotsman race by any stretch. I think Dancing Gemini is probably the one that the trainers managed to straighten out the most. I
think you have to be strict and say the second is 90. So it gave it 5 and a 4 lengths beating. So 95, maybe if you're generous, 10, 12. It could be 105 to 107, John, the winner.
Yeah, I think that'll be as far as he goes, man. I don't think he's got a lot of scope.
Right, interesting. Interesting paddock comment from yourself there. The sickener for me of the day, and I'll be honest, I sat there absolutely spewing after the Flying Childers because I confess, obviously, having a very decent bet on Big Evs in the Nunthorpe and was perplexed how it was beaten very quickly. And before people say about older horses, rubbish. Right, the 2-year-olds have acquitted themselves perfectly well in the past in the Flying in the Nunthorpe. I'm not buying into any of that crap. It was the older horses. It couldn't be the older horses, John. It was beat after about a furlong and a half in the Nunthorpe, wasn't it?
It was one of them York defeats, wasn't it? Really, inexplicable. It's run like a cunt at York. Those who have the gumption to forget it get paid next time. We basically couldn't get over how bad it was, could we?
Well, it was like to be honest, it was like the stout horse, wasn't it? Real Dream in the Mallard. Yeah. Where me and John were in the box. If you didn't listen to the Friday show, I know like everyone don't listen to the Friday show, but we were in the box on the Saturday, and only reason we noticed it probably more than others because you're above the action. And we watched Real Dream cross the line. It didn't even make it round the bend. We were even shocked it was actually running. To be fair, it's ran a race where it makes you wonder, John. Well, like the instructions for Ryan just to make sure it finished its race off. Do you reckon that was the sort of like possibly modus operandi there?
It just struck me as a case of we'll run him and see what happens. Really.
Yeah, because it were weird because he made running at York just about, and much to the dismay of our colleague Dick Davis, who was all over it for the Ebor, and sadly it kind of ran its race probably very early. But we were very alarmed at York how it didn't get round the bend, even just cantering round it, just walking past the line. So me and John were shocked to see it, but it did reappear. John,
it was like when you have lasagna for tea and your mother's got it out of the oven and it's hit the deck before she's got it on the plates, and then she's plated it up afterwards, wasn't it? A drop lasagna.
There you go, Real Dream, a drop lasagna for you anti-purse punters for anything that's in over the autumn races. If you're running Real Dream again, John, which I know you probably wouldn't, but if you was, where are you going with Real Dream next?
I'd probably punish him and stick him in the says.
There we go.
I think that's a November handicap, wouldn't it, really?
You'd think so. You'd think so. Right, on to Trushan then, your favourite. Thing is, what you're so right about this, but you still have to keep paying out. And before anyone after times and says, well, why is John so negative on Trushan all the time, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the race itself, I think, explained it. I mean, they walked round, and I think that's the only reason it managed to win, because if they're going to pace, I don't think this could have won, because simply as, this carted Ollie, didn't it, all the way around, John?
Well, I mean, she just got sick of getting carted, really, and fighting. She gave up.
Yeah.
And she thought, fuck it, I can't hold this any longer. My hands are going to start bleeding.
So
it's flawed. It's after that, isn't it? What a ride!
I didn't see it. I didn't see the Arsene Wenger here. I didn't see the ITV or the reactions. How were the reactions towards the ride?
The usual, Holly's ridden a winner. What do you do? Well done, Holly. Genius at work. Master tactical stroke. Let the horse stride on. Here we go.
I mean, you've said since dawn of time that she's the wrong pilot for this horse, and I get it. This is something. Sometimes I'll disagree with you, or like we can all do, but I agree with you that she's never managed to get hold of this horse, has she? She's never managed to.
I don't really get it, because I mean she is a thinking jockey. She does think about what she does. She's pretty clever. I mean, she's brainier than Kurt Cobain's garage well. for just persist like she's doing with this, and not sort of come up with a plan. I don't really get it, but anyway, it's come off for her yesterday, isn't it?
It's one of them for me, John. I think. Are you opposing Trushan in the cup races to come?
I mean, if it runs in the Cadran, I think it'll just get swept aside.
Yeah. Do you think they go Cadran, or do you think they go?
If they go to Ascot, I think there's plenty of them going there to blow a hole in him anyway. I'm not too worried where he goes. I'll have to take him on.
So, anything from the weekend, John? Something for the weekend, sir, that you think maybe has some anti-post, significance? Is there anything, anything in your mind that caught your eye?
Funnily enough, our anti-post Cambridgeshire horse, Liberty Bay, I thought he looked absolutely tremendous yesterday. By far and away the best I've seen him look all year. I just get the impression he might just be starting to really find himself. And I think 12 to, even though I know we've been advising him at 33s and whatever, I think 12 to 114 might even still be a bit of value about him for that race.
I agree. And do you know why I think he's the perfect Cambridge horse? Like you've said for a while, and Nick, for a long time, you both said he's the perfect horse for the Cambridgeshire because he travels real sweet, real kindly. So like he can just sort of either light up with the pace, or he can sit behind the pace, whatever. And the mile, as you saw from Doncaster on Saturday, and we've been asked about the Sonny Liston ride. Nathan Hull said thoughts on the Sonny Liston ride. Did Moore drop his whip, or is this horse a bit of a headbanger who has his quirks, as he didn't use his stick once on Sonny Liston? To be honest, I haven't looked at Sonny Liston in a replay, so I can't comment whether that was the case. But do we think Liberty Lane, though, 9 furlongs, he's like absolutely perfect?
Oh, I think it's absolutely bang on for him. Now he's settling, I mean, he was running over 10 in the spring, and he wasn't settling. He was running muddling little fields and things, and he wasn't seeing it out. But I think if you could write a race for him, like somebody leaves Coronation Street and they write a script for him, don't they? They do a little 3-parter on ITV. That's the little 3-parter you'd write for Liberty Lane, really. Culminate with the Cambridge,
Yeah. I mean, it's a great spot by you chaps. Like I said, John's had this in his notes on Patreon for a while now about Cambridge. That's his ideal race. Davis has been salivating every time it runs, wanting to put it out as a bet, and he just every time it runs, really, it's like yeah, this will win, and it's like yeah, he did finally do the biz for us on Saturday. So the ride on Sunny Liston, did you see it, John, close up?
I have to be honest, I didn't take a lot of notice of it. I have sort of had my own doubts about Sunny Liston, so if the jockey was a bit kid gloves, I'm not surprised.
It could be a reason, because I think Nick was also equally sort of negative on it.
Yeah.
In terms of it's sort of had its chances, shall we say?
Detestable Chelsea thoroughbreds as well.
Yeah, awful outfit. Yeah, made in Chelsea types. Yeah, awful people. Right, go on to some questions. I reckon it's question times to break the show up here before we start going on about boring gambling commission and BHA and rubbish like that. So we cover some questions. First one, one of our columnists, Nick Davis, says, "Is Juggy as John the type that can't stand losing even one bet? How would you put him down to finishing third in a ledger, for example?"
Could be the case. He might take his bat and ball on, you know. He said everything happening to him his whole life. He maybe thought that was just a matter of going and getting the ledger trophy yesterday.
Apparently, he was in good form in the paddock. He was answering questions from the oiks in the crowd, and one of the oiks asked him for a lend job.
He declined, obviously.
What a question, Chris! Would you get that at Ascot? I mean, come on! Can you imagine the king? He's walking like frivolously around with Queen Consort Camilla, whatever you call her, and walking round, and they're engaging with the crowd. Does anyone at Ascot ask them for a lend?
I fucking would if I was there. So the answer is yeah, I'd be there tapping him up for a few quid. Honestly, yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
Jeff Banks would be horrified at this. Jeff Banks.
He couldn't believe what he saw, you know, last night in Doncaster, King Charles, because apparently he was walking down the street coming away from the race, and there was a guy leaning against this front door and pissing against it. And then the bloke took his keys out and went inside.
Yeah.
Are we different up north, Chris?
Well, yeah, different. Different is the right word, I think. Yeah, I'd say yeah, definitely different. But there's plenty of pissing on doors and shitting in the street round here. So I think we're catching you up. I think in terms of what's the word? Socially acceptable behaviour. So yeah,
is that the new word for levelling up?
Leveling up. We're dragging down, isn't it? That's the thing. It's not improving. It's going downhill rapidly.
So Davis, decent question. Sean's been up and he said, "Racing League granted. The teams thing is some load of bollocks.
It is.
But decent punting cards. Or have I lost my mind, John?"
The decent punting cards to a point, and then you wonder how the hell they arrived at the jockey bookings, don't you?
Right. If I can put my 10 pence in, they are competitive cards.
Oh, yeah.
But there are two issues here, surely. The first issue is, are you taking away some of the Saturday horses for the weekend cards? Is the first answer that they think, oh, not a bad pot that on a Thursday night or whatever. Second thing is, isn't it a bit like King Kong, where it's like 4-1 the field, 12, 14 runner races? They're racing against each other, fucking all, you know, class 4s, class 3s, class 2s. It's a bit fucking boring to me.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be too dogmatic about it, can you? You know, I mean, it's there.
Well, the amount of bets I can dig up on a Racing League card, you know, and going through it with a tooth comb. I've had a few. I've had a few, but not as much as you'd think.
No.
And that's because everything's like, well, that beat that half a length last time. It's a pound worse off. They've got same draws. It's like one. Well, Safi's picked that one, and it's like, you know, yeah. It doesn't inspire like myself.
No, you couldn't just blanket slag it off, because that's like the people that say there's no good way to die, and they haven't heard of the phrase drug fueled sex heart attack, have they? You know.
Yeah.
So.
I want to be like him in Live and Let Die. Him that pops up out at floor, John.
Oh, yeah, Baron Samedi. Yeah,
Baron Samedi. He knows how to do it. The man who cannot die.
Yeah, and proceeds to die several times. Incredible.
And as Kananga said in that film, names is for tombstones, baby. We're going off topic. Right, here we go. Right, next question. We go to this one. This is a good one from Racing Daily. And he said, the Ledger is the least important classic, in my opinion. Important if you win it. Other than that, who cares? And Dettori to ride in the USA next year? ? With dollar signs. And as for 30, John, does he actually do anything?
Well, I say he's going to be the big man, isn't he? Soon. I mean, let's be fair. Rickety old Gozza can't go on forever, and 30's in the happy position of not needing a surname with a name like 30. He's like Madonna or Adele, isn't he? You know?
Yeah. Or Elvis.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It will become 30, won't it? ITV won't be calling him 30 Gosling. It'll be 30, won't it? Yeah. Like a TM, a little TM at the end of it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Is 30 more of a tipping point or a chase or a pointless or House of Games kind of guy, John?
Tipping point all the way. Loves the simplicity of it.
Is he the one that would he take the plunge for the gamble with three counters with the star on the edge, or is he the one that takes the money?
He'd be the one that definitely would take the gamble because he's never been without anything in his life and wouldn't understand the concept of losing everything.
Chris, what would you think 30 is? I mean, would you be able to take 30 on at a tipping point? You know, in the rounds before, you know, where you get through to the final stages.
Oh yeah, destroy him. Yeah, no question.
Would you be confident? Yeah.
Oh yeah. No problems at all. I mean, I've only heard the guy speak once or twice, and he doesn't strike me as the brightest, does he? I mean, I'm probably doing him a disservice. I don't think you'd have too many problems turning him over, would you? Really?
No.
Yeah, certainty, absolute certainty to beat him. So if he's listening, bring it fucking on. Honestly.
Yeah, there you go, 30. Let's have a Barsters quiz challenge. We could do it. We could do it live on air. Get punters to tweet the Gosden lot and say, come on, get 30 on. Let's show some intelligence here.
He's a very deep thinker, you know. He was once asked about the Oscar Pistorius situation, and he said it's tragic, really, because if he'd had no arms instead of no legs, that'd have never happened.
He's not wrong, now, is he? He's not wrong.
You see that? Yeah, that's a perfect example. Right, so coming back to earlier questions from Racing Daily, so the Ledger is the least important classic. So, John, we can agree with that, I suppose, in regards to breeding. Is it the least important classic? Is that it? Is a Ledger winners now castigated to either National Hunt sires, or are we done?
It probably is regarding the future of a Ledger winner. It's just the only time you're going to be really cracking one off now is if you have a Triple Crown winner, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, because if you've done it over the mile, then that's what counts for breeding. You do it over the mile, like you said, the Triple Crown is. I reckon Coolmore are still really attracted by the Triple Crown. You can tell that because that's what they tried. They wanted Auguste Rodin to do that, and that's what they set out to do. If that had won the Guineas, and it's obviously then going to won the Derby, I'll guarantee you then that sat quiet for the Ledger, and that was the original plan.
Absolutely.
As Hannibal said in the 18th...
Magna would love a Triple Crown.
Loves it when a plan comes together.
The pants would be off.
Dettori to ride in the USA next year for dollars. Yes, I mean, look at Frankie this year. The man is a fucking disgrace. I'm sorry, but, you know, an O'Shea Murphy's riding at Listowel next week for nothing. Maybe a bag of coke. But whatever. The fact that the Tories on this farewell tour, you know for a fact this man is not retiring. I am certain that Dettori will not retire, and I will stake anybody anything that this man will take up a job somewhere. I presume the USA. I reckon that's the desired target for big dollars, and this is just all a big absolute money making carousel. But Chris, Do you blame him?
No, I don't. But the irony of somebody that claims that his mentor was Barney Curley, was all about giving something back. Racing has rescued him from some very dark places. And whilst he's entitled to, get his few quid in his sort of, final year, his valedictory sort of final tour, it's a bit rich, isn't it? I mean, he does seem to be exploiting it. So, and I don't think he's short of a few quid. I mean, I don't know for a fact, but I think he's a few quid ahead of us. So, he just doesn't. I don't know. I mean, I don't warm to the guy particularly. I don't like the antics, etc. But I suppose if he wants to get a few quid, fair play. But he doesn't seem to be doing a lot for racing, does he? And racing has given him a lot and rescued him from some very dark places, and it's given him a living. So I think the least he could do is play nice. But whatever.
I agree with that, John.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go along with that. Really, what Chris says. He's had some very dark times, and racing hasn't always been forced to bail him out. Really, I mean, there's a couple of times he could have been gone, wasn't there?
Well, again, this is hearsay. I could be totally wrong. This is rumours, as we all get them, and I do. I get some good rumours or some good contact stuff. And I've heard on a few occasions that he's had his collar felt for substance abuse more than once after testing. So that's allegedly that's what I've heard on the grapevine, that basically they couldn't go there, they couldn't lambast him because racing also knows that Dettori is the only jockey that can get racing onto the front pages, onto the back pages of sport. And no one else can. There isn't, unless it's for like clubbing an horse over an head or, like say, Animal Rising or something like that. There's only Dettori now that can get the sport on the back and front pages, and that's how it is. So I think we owe him for that.
No, Rob Ferry's dead anyway.
Yeah, he'll have to paint. So it's kind of. For me, it's double-sided. I think the Tories done a lot of good for the sport in terms of mainstream, but in terms of racing itself now, this is a proper feather in your nest kind of. This is our rock band. It's our last ever tour, and it's never the last ever tour. They just say it is, and then they come out 5 years later and do another one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a definite whiff of that. There's an atmosphere. I know lots of people say, he's going to retire. Some people say he won't. But there's an atmosphere that this is simply a sort of a cynical device. Something will turn up, or he's bored or whatever, and 6 months later he'll pop up again. I'm sure of it. He seems in good shape. So there's no obvious reason why he's decided to jack it in. He hasn't got an injury. He seems to be riding as well as you can expect. There's no massive decline in his skill. So, I think this might be a little bit of a device, but, whatever.
We'll come to the next part of the question that we've had from Stephen Thomas. And he said the levy board seems reluctant to sign off on next year's fixture list. Is the BHA's dreaded premierisation catastrophe already dead in the water? That's an interesting thing, because obviously if you're going to do premierisation, John and Chris, you've got to get the agreement. I say you got to get the agreement, of course. Look at Paul Fakenham. Their biggest crowd of the year on New Year's Day has been lost due to this very fact. And, what's going to happen? Are we going to end up with less call? What is going to happen with this? Do the BHA even know what they're doing with this? What's happening?
Probably not. Like everything else from the BHA, it's been very short and detail, hasn't it? You get sort of the vague idea that they've kicked around, and then nothing else. And I sort of get the impression that this probably still has to go through 5 or 6 subcommittees before it's anything like a workable idea, and well, they run out of time, basically, haven't they?
Yeah, this is, for me, a board of control, a bit like the Gambling Commission, which we'll come on to later, that are simply out of their depth in terms of running British horse racing. They are not running British horse racing for the benefit of British horse racing. And that this is clear, because premierisation as we have pointed out on the show, like we did with affordability checks, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. You know, we hadn't just been doing it recently, we've been doing it for the last 2 years, so some trumpet blowing there. But in terms of premierisation, as we've pointed out profusely, this is purely down to big corporation. And big corporation want 10 a.m. starts, and they want 9 p.m. finishes, and they want that 7 days a week. And whether that fucks tracks off, whether that fucking just impedes racing staff's holidays, they don't care. They do not give one flying fig about anyone else in the industry other than the profits for those and them shareholders. And the BHA, because like John has said many a time on the deal that is negotiated by those and Big Corp on gross profits tax, that's where you have the problem. Because if the BHA don't agree to this or don't like dance the tune of the Pied Piper, we end up with a funding crisis, don't we, John?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, very much so. We're staring at the abyss, there's no question.
Yeah, and the powers that be could have certainly steered in a different direction, because I am certain that the Big Corp need horse racing to get punters in the shops, Chris, for their crack cocaine fix.
Yeah,
that's the initial. Right, what we're betting on here? Right, I got that's 318 at Crayford, there's 325 at Doncaster, there's 340 at wherever, and it's like punt. Right, we've done this fucking box that fucking roulette and even 50 on red, you know.
Yeah, they do. But racing has been failed, isn't it? But it's been a crisis of leadership, and I think what will be now. But they've been absolutely useless in all respects. Totally enthralled to Big Corp. They've showed no leadership, no direction, no strategy. All the things regarding affordability. They're almost kind of stewards of the sport in the worst possible sense. They're simply jollying it along, but they're not setting the direction of travel or the vision, and they've just been useless, and they're just being carried along now, aren't they?
Yeah. Okay, some other issues we'd like to touch on. Andrew Woodman, councillor, did an article for us today on Patron, and he did a really heartfelt article for himself, really, because he's a Crohn's disease sufferer, and I know for a fact he's endured years of agony over this disease. It's horrific, and he did a fantastic article. And poor Harry Burns, the rider in question, this was really sad to see that a jockey that suffers this disease has been taking medication for this disease and not for sports enhanced improvement. And poor Harry decided that, I don't know what protocol there is in terms of jockeys informing the BHA or informing, he might have broke some protocol there. I don't know the ins and outs, but irrelevant to that, we're talking about empathy, aren't we, chaps? We're talking about a chap that suffers from a life-debilitating disease, which is clearly crap. If you read from sufferers of Crohn's, it's a really crap disease, especially for a jockey. And what? Not only have they fucked him up the arse, they've decided to say, look, Harry, you've broken the rules. We'll bring our barrister as well. A fucking barrister. Can you believe this? A barrister to dish out the punishment. Harry sat there unrepresented. They give him the full whack, a 2-month ban. So, Harry, we feel for you. You're suffering from Crohn's. You were taking medication just to basically fight your Crohn's, not to fucking able to fucking. Well, you're not going to get 7 smacks, are you, these days? So it makes a difference. So, I mean, we feel for you because this is, again, John and Chris, a failure from the top of the sport to just realise a situation that this is not a drug offence. This is not something, a cheating or a sport advantageous kind of situation. This is a chap that possibly should have informed them of his medication. I'm pretty sure that could have been protocol, but surely they could have realised that, slapped him on the wrist. Let's move on.
Yeah, it's just clueless, aren't they, really, as regards anything, man management, anything. You know, they just continually get it wrong, don't they? You know what I mean? They might as well formulate all their policies going through the incinerator at the Daily Mail looking for stuff that the Mail thought would get them prosecuted.
Yeah, it is exactly that, isn't it?
I mean, it's such a sad. I think this is a sad story, really, because the guy is going to lose 2 months of income. So it's like, here, Harry, you're a Crohn sufferer. But how does that work in terms of discrimination, right? Workplace discrimination. Is this not workplace? Because this not be legally challenged, Chris?
No, it hasn't. And you know, but with the fact he hasn't got legal representation, it's gone through on the nod, hasn't it? But, you know, you'd have to ask, most employers have an obligation to take into account the physical and emotional needs of their staff and you know, and work and the employee rights are enshrined in legislation, but it doesn't seem to apply when, you know, horse racing is concerned. It is a feudal system, isn't it? You know, that's the problem.
But in public life, so like, let's say you go to the office, right? You break a rule, but that rule is, say, a bit sort of vague in terms of, well, you've done this, but you had to do it because that's what you have to do. But it does break a sort of company rule.
They've steamrolled the lad, haven't they? That's what they've done.
I believe this has a case, Chris, in terms of like employment, like tribunal. You can't deprive a jockey of 2 months of his livelihood for him and his family, and his whoever, his siblings, whatever, just on the case of, well, you're taking medication for your disease.
No, I agree. I mean, but the cost, I guess, of bringing those actions and
I know. Can you imagine? I know the be it wankers.
And what damages he could claim. You know, obviously loss of earnings, etc. And the culture of racing is, you know, take your band, shut up, and get your head down. You know, work harder. That's the sort of the culture that seems to prevail, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, take it on the chin, lad, etc.
Yeah.
You know, that's the problem.
Horrible fuckers. Honestly, the BHA, like the Gambling Commission, and like current politicians and government, we're absolutely all in scum. And Harry Burns, the bar stewards feel for you right now. It's unjust, and 2 months really of your livelihood has been taken away by these bastards. SD Bowen, the same. 35 days for whip offences. Obviously, an Irish jockey coming to ride in England, probably knew the rules. I get it. But again, 35 days for whip offences for a young lad trying to win races. What has this game come to? It really is now at a state where we're completely fucked. I mean, whoever's running this sport has guided it into such a place where we've got no outs. We've got no outs anymore. So one more thing. Luke Comer questions Conkers 2017 said, how must the kitchen fitter be feeling after seeing that Comer only got 3 years for doping? In my opinion, what Comer did was a lot worse than McNally. Absolutely. Again, Comer is a very wealthy businessman. McNally is a kitchen fitter. That's more or less it. That's where horse racing bodies feel free to exercise their jurisdiction on participants. And certainly if you are of a certain ilk, are they going to do JP McManus? Are they going to do Ryan Moore? Are they going to do Coolmore? Are they going to do, you know, I mean, look what they did with Nicky Henderson. You know, like, you know, it's bollocks. If you're a certain name and a certain ilk, right, we'll come on to the last part of the show, which is on gambling affordability, which again dominates much of our lives. And I refer to an article from Carm Berry, which I'll put a link in the tweet in the sermon, because it's outstanding, really. It really is that good. And the sad thing, he even has to put legal disclaimers in the article, which is quite immense. You know, the fact he's just stating facts and our facts. according to him, but are fact. They are. They're in the public domain. I've read all this, and they are. So why has he written such a scathing article on the Gambling Commission, etc., etc.? Well, affordability checks are now desperately being rebranded as risk and vulnerability checks, and certainly have affected Calm, myself included, and countless other sports bettors in terms of being able to get a living. In fact, I read one the other day talking about trumpeting Chris Paul standards. My lifetime, I think it's like 1.2 million Betfair. I saw 1.7 million on Betfair lifetime get done for he got restricted to £100 a month.
Yeah,
£100 a month you can bet. So let's think what these operators are really doing. Really, they're not doing this in terms of harm and trying to rescue people from, committing serious harm to themselves and their family. They're clearly doing it to, clearly ruin the lives of many people that have done this sport for years and have done it profitably and within their means. Now, I mean, this is Andrew Rhodes. So basically, this is how it works in Khan's experience, which I thought was quite interesting. So he says operators often request various documents for regulatory and compliance purposes. Commonly, they ask for a driving license, a utility bill, 3 months unredacted bank statements, proof of income, evidence of savings, payslips, and pictures of a bank card used for depositing. Number 2, this usually initiates a drawn-out back-and-forth exchange via email. They might request the same item repeatedly, claiming they never received it.
Yeah.
Number 3, when they finally acknowledge receipt, the real challenges arise, with demands for extra documentation and rejecting submissions for nonsensical reasons. Number 4, in extreme cases, some require you to pose with all these documents outside your residence to validate your identity. By now, the compliance team were all laughing their bollocks off at Ginger Joe, from Beckhampton, and he stood there in front of number 23 with all these documents, with the missus stood in the doorway with the kid, blah blah blah. I mean, this is what we've come. So Khan says up until point 3, and depending on the operator, this process usually takes 48 hours to 2 weeks. The dirtiest players will have you playing email tennis for longer. And all this is going off while the Gambling Commission are basically representing one side of the industry, chaps. I mean, Chris, I'm going to come to you first, right? Is this Ben? Is it Ben or is it incompetence, or is it both?
I think it's both. Most of these things, there's a healthy dose of incompetence, but as we said before, there's an agenda here, isn't there? This hasn't come out of nowhere. There is a strategy in play, because you can see time and time again that they're going over and above, even the guidelines. They're going far and away, undertaking these checks, to a greater extent than is required. So you have to conclude. Well, the only conclusion is that there is an agenda here. This is, in quotes, corruption, isn't it?
Well, this is the point, right? So how, like going forward, you've always mentioned very good points on Barsteward's sermons about how to market people like for the BHA. So instead of targeting young ones to come to the races, you need to target the old ones with the disposable income. So how do you do that when basically self-employed individuals, company directors and retirees, how do they prove their income when they've just got basically lump sums tied up all over the fucking place? They haven't got an income.
Exactly. They can't. That's the problem, and that's a depressing feature. That they've lost that opportunity, haven't they, to market to a demographic that is better placed to get involved. That's the problem. And they've missed that trick. But because they've been absolutely obsessed with the sort of the sockless Giacomo suit wearing demographic, that opportunity's gone, because anyone with who's retired, who's got a few quid, they're not going to go through that crap just to go to have a bet or go to the races. they're going to do something else, aren't they? So I'm afraid that that the racing shot itself in the foot, and that's the problem.
So why is it, John, that basically racing as it stands, BHA, I'm on about here, don't see it as a problem? There's not really much to see here. There's not really a problem.
Well, basically, they're fucking idiots, aren't they? Because they can't see there's a problem. They're either complices or they're idiots.
Well,
you can't do anything else.
Well, to back this up, John Hughes, who's one of the bigger syndicate owners, like involving people in racing syndicates in the UK, and this is to quote him this week, right? I'd say 50% of the people involved in my network are there because they like to gamble as part of their ownership.
Yeah.
I've got one person in my network who is a fairly significant gambler who has won and lost 7-figure sums over the last 10 years. He's a big owner with me, and he's saying he will quit British racing as things stand, and he's not making an empty threat. If there's no change in direction, people like him are just going to leave. It's plain and simple, right? But yet, again, the BHA are sat in silence.
From Harrington, can you, on that?
No, nothing. Zero. She turns up at Salisbury with a big smiley face. Smiley, Carol Smiley. Yes, everything's lovely and absolutely fantastic. It's fucking fantastic. And that's all you're getting from Julie Harrington, when in fact racing is literally on fire. It's massively on fire. And we've been pointing out on a podcast for yonks. Everyone just don't ignore it until finally their houses are burning. Now everyone's like listening and going, oh yeah, you're right. You're actually right. yeah, we're on fire, aren't we? Yeah, we fucking are. And we're fucked. And this is it. This is it. If you cannot get people to run the sport in a proper manner, to basically question outside groups, and I say this, outside groups in terms of the Gambling Commission, they're an outside group. What the fuck have they got to do with the BHA? Fuck all, right? It's like, what are you doing telling our consumers and punters what they can afford to bet? That's the right answer. That's the absolute total right answer to say to the Gambling Commission. And you not walk hand in hand and say, yes, we share your concerns about gambling harm. Fucking hell. That's
the VHA say they're doing a lot behind the scenes, and they've got lobbyists going on and all the rest of it.
Load of shit.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, that's like the Invisible Man saying he's kicking the shit out of a mime artist.
Yeah, it's like that, isn't it? That's the problem. I don't think anyone believes that anymore, do they? That's the problem. It's just nonsense. Their track record suggests that they're doing nothing other than simply nodding along with proposals that are handed to them. They're not setting the agenda. They're not leading the sport, are they?
They're sat there, Chris, and it's a bit like what Civvy Street folk do, right? So basically, they're waiting for the paycheck to fund racing. It's the only thing they care about. As long as there's enough money to pay the prize money, to pay the, and to keep the ship running, they don't give a fuck about anything. And I mean, they literally do not give two flying fucks. Harry Burns is a sight of that. The fact you need a barrister to knock down a Crohn's sufferer. I mean, you absolute bastards. And I'm saying this live on air. You, honestly, if I met you in public, fucking hell, you get my wrath. But this is it. It's seriously bad. And to finish the show, the misrepresentation of gambling, Khan goes on to say, and I do repeat this, I will put a link to Khan's article on the Twitter feed because people must read this. You have to read this. It's good stuff. Channels like Sky News and the BBC tend to showcase only one side of the debate, often leaving the misconceptions and inaccuracies they propagate unchallenged. Untrue statements about tragedy are repeated over and over to the point that the public believe it. That's all there is to it. Oh, this guy's chucked himself off a bridge. Poor family. They've been left with a 22-year-old that's lost his life due to the horrible sport of gambling. It's terrible, absolutely terrible. And so basically, to sum up, ordinary folk are being financially exploited with the excuse of regulation. Lived experience of a select few appears to override the sensible majority. When it comes to checks, the fox is left in charge of the hen house. i.e. corporations. The regulator doesn't act on their public promises and spreads misinformation on social media, i.e. it goes on about statistics. Dodgy statistics are broadcast by almost every mainstream news outlet repeatedly. Massive funding gets blown on ridiculous groups with questionable behaviour, and MPs are oblivious that checks have already been happening for 2 years. MPs actually think that checks haven't even come in yet, despite checks, gambling checks and account dismissals have been happening for years. And this is what we're having to deal with. Fucking lunatics. They're all in charge of the asylum, folks, and it's only the bar stewards and other podcasts that lead this, like Carnberry and other people, that can change this. I hope you've enjoyed this show. That's all from me, Chris and John. Bye for now.